All right, everybody. We're going to get cooking here in a few minutes. But as you can see by the topic of today's stream, we're doing some dynamic sprite composition. What does that mean? I'll show you. Check it out. I whipped this up last night before bed. Today we're gonna clean things up a little bit. Code mostly works, as you can see. And I haven't done the math on how many different combinations we can do right now. Not to mention, there's a part 2 to this whole project of dynamically composing my sprites now, because while the pixel artist has generally done a very good job of creating and providing assets, the way that they're handled requires a lot of input, essentially. How should I say this? So the sprite here is in the idle animation. And each one of these assets, these clothing items, each has its own file. So there's files for the hats, files for the jackets, the shirts, the shoes, the gloves. Every piece of clothing has a associated sprite, but in addition to that, each associated piece of clothing has a sprite for that animation. So in other words, for each animation that a humanoid character has, if we want to do this properly, we have to make sure that for each animation we have a corresponding clothing item as well. So as an example, there's a folder under hats called hoods, and then there's a hood for each of the different colors supported. There's like 15 of them. So I got 15 hoods for the idle animation. I also have to implement those same 15 hoods for the damage animation, for the death animation, for the walking animation, and he gives me those. And so that's not really the problem, that's just like physical work. I don't have to think about that too hard. One of the good news is that for a lot of the existing assets, they take up an incredibly small amount of space. Like I think we got like 9 or 10 different categories. So we're sitting on like 1,500. Wait, is that right? Yeah. So for each, no, 150. So that's 150 assets for like one thing, right? Actually, we can calculate that out real quick. Okay, so at the moment there's 268 image files under my image folder. And they're taking up a total of 1.7 megabytes. So in other words, incredibly small footprint. And so it's really not infeasible for me to like load all of the textures into memory at game run, right? So you notice that the pathing for like blouses, for instance, is under body, human, idle. So the good news is that for both orc and elf, we can use the human assets so that we don't end up having to duplicate a whole lot. But here's the problem, right? My dude only gave me assets for those 4 animations: idle, damage, death, and walking. And I didn't see assets for halflings, for goblins, or dwarves even. So if I wanted to like make generic versions of those NPC types, I'd have to add that in there. In addition to that, I also need to work in facial hair today, as well as hairstyles. But, okay, so the problem is he only gave me animations for those 4 basic types. The next problem is that I want to get animations in for things like attack with, optional clothing, right? The way things sit at the moment, this creates a bit of a problem for me, right? Because we don't have clothing for those animations. Humans got a lot of different animations. He's got attacking with the bow, slashing and thrusting. He's got a death animation, damage, guard success, idling, jumping, mining, soul dying, and walking. So we've got, I was demoing idle earlier, right? We've got assets to actually implement walk, damage, and die, but we don't have assets for attack, bow, slash, and thrust, guard success, jump, mining, soul die. So we're missing associated assets with those animations. Now, I can demo the problem over here. I hope y'all like my vertical monitor setup. What's up, Lon CZ? How you doing, man? Welcome to the stream. So I'm demoing a problem that I'm facing with regards to making some really sweet dynamic animations here. Dynamic sprite creation. So let's use attack because this is like a really important animation. As you can see, it's a 4x4 grid. So let's open up like a hat. Let's do a cowboy hat. Let's do a what color? Purple cowboy hat. Fuck yeah. I don't know that this is a cowboy hat necessarily, but you know, fuck it. So notice that this is for the idle animation, right? So if I were to take this whole section right here, this 4x4 area, we head over to the attack sprite again. If we just simply paste it on top, you notice that the position of the hat does not conform or like follow with like where the player's at, right? Or where the character's at. You know, we would want this to like jingle around a little bit. So I've been thinking of like a solution for this. Something that will allow me to procedurally create each missing sprite, right? So how are we going to do that? Let's take this hat. That's a good hat. So imagine, if you will, we have one frame from one of the hats. We go over to attack and we drop it down. The default position is under the presumption that the center of the character's head falls in between these two lines, right? If we actually measure out this area, this actually measures to 8x7. It's 8x7 because we're supposed to have a shadow beneath it, but at the moment I haven't worked that in yet. However, under the system that I've created here, it should be very easy for us to just add a shadow sprite to our characters whenever we need to, because what I implemented last night was layers for the sprites. So every sprite can have multiple layers, and so you can stack textures on top of each other, and it's all very dynamic, and you can change things like super rapidly and on the fly, and it feels pretty good. So hell yeah, Dulce, what the fuck is up, man? That's what's good. So let me show that demo. I'm gonna go ahead and start blazing up here and get back to it. My cat is in my chair. That's one reason I haven't started yet, and I feel bad that I'm gonna have to kick him out. See, on the side also, I've been studying Mandarin Chinese. 我说中文，我喜欢中文和英文。我是大学生。你呢？ Been doing a little bit of Duolingo, as well as I actually vibe coded out my own flashcard application. It still needs a little bit of work, and I'm going to do a stream where I show it off and grow it a little bit in the near future. But today is game dev. Today is not the kind of productive game dev where I'm stubbing out new features of the game itself so much as preparing for a future where this kind of system I'm building here I use in the games that I make in the future, as well as the ones that I'm working on now. Oh hell yeah, Chinese tea, nice. I'm a fan of green tea as well as oolong tea. And I also like, English breakfast tea, as well as some good Earl Grey. But last time I had Earl Grey, I almost felt like I had an allergic reaction to it, so I haven't tried it in a long time. I'm not sure exactly why. Every so often I get like breathing irritation with certain herbs. Growing up, I was really intimidated by Mandarin, Chinese in general. Not because of the Hanzi. I know enough Japanese that I'm pretty confident in my ability to pick those up. It was the pronunciation, because around the time that I was actually thinking of doing Mandarin and stuff as a teenager, I had just gotten some dental work done where I got a spreader. If you don't know what a spreader is, it's this spider-like metallic device that they cement in the roof of your mouth, and it's got a notch in there that you can crank with a small wrench that they give you. And the whole idea is that it's supposed to spread the roof of your mouth so that you have more room for teeth, so that if you're experiencing what they call crowding, where your teeth come in so tightly together that they kind of cause the other teeth to like push each other out and become misshapen, or like come in at weird angles and stuff. So I had that done, and don't ask me to roll my R's back then, because that shit wasn't happening. And it's not happening now either. I'm pretty convinced that the spreader actually like made it more difficult for me to roll my R's when speaking languages like German or Spanish. So, not to mention, I'm kind of a monotone person at times, and the biggest intimidation for Mandarin for me was about the tones. But I've kind of gotten over it by just not thinking about it so much. And actually, when I build my flashcards, I use a version of Pinyin where I don't put the accents over the characters. And the reason I do this is because when I'm typing Mandarin here in my terminal, or just text in general, I can do something like this where Moshi Moshi. Okay, I'm back. Let's see. All right, where I leave off? I was talking about Mandarin. Um, Even more important than speaking, or sorry, than typing or reading, I feel is speaking and listening. Like, by the time I entered like a formal Japanese class in college, I already knew all of the hiragana, knew all the katakana, and I knew a handful of kanji already. I was pretty fast at getting that stuff down as a kid. But as a kid, living in an American English speaking household, it never occurred to me to like practice speaking Japanese, on my own. Oh, my doggy just woke up, so I'm gonna have to step away again. But speaking being more important than reading, listening being more important than writing, and vice versa. Um, but I'm enjoying it. I'm getting comfortable with the idea that maybe 10 years from now I could be rather proficient at Mandarin as well. Um, my Japanese is like good enough that I can like start learning on my own a bit, like without really being prompted. And I can kind of like decipher things, like if there's a word that I can't read in a sentence, I can kind of like based on context and stuff kind of figure out not only what the word is but also how to pronounce it. Japanese kind of has some heuristics for this kind of thing. Um, but there's definitely like a really important bridge between like speaking and reading. Nowadays, I think maybe writing is like less important. Because honestly, how many people out there straight up be handwriting shit anymore? All right, y'all. Be right back. Just gotta take Gracie out for a pee, and then I'm probably gonna swap to the big screen so that I can sit next to her. But I'll be right back. Okay. I'm going to move in a few minutes to the couch. But while I'm here, I wanted to finish this explanation about this next step after kind of what I'm going to show y'all that I did today, just reviewing what I did last night. So, dynamic sprite composition, right? And actually, I think something's slightly off about the presentation because I think it's cutting off the top of some of these sprites. So I'm just going to have to like verify what I'm actually drawing here. But the point being that like for other animations that I haven't implemented yet or that I don't have a corresponding clothing asset for, let's take purple, supposed to be a cowboy hat. No, sorry, let's take black fedora, right? No, I think that's black fedora. No, I'm stupid. Which one is this? I think this is hunter hat. Or ranger hat. Black ranger hat. Yeah. Okay. So like, you take the default first frame of the idle animation asset for that clothing item, and you drop it on top of the first frame of the new animation that you're having to handle, right? Next, we want to move to the next frame. Notice that for previously, so the idle animation default asset is pretty much like head is dead center. And so for each of these new animations, we can't just drop it onto the next frame and expect it to be positioned correctly. So like it's off center, right? So like we have to find a way to procedurally adjust the position of each frame of the new animation's corresponding clothing asset by figuring out how far over is the character moving in that animation. And generally speaking, we might be able to create a heuristic where, because the organization of the animation is based off of like this, I call it context, but it's effectively the row of the animation. So like if your column is which frame of the animation you're currently on, then the row is like which direction is the character facing. You know, we have down right, down left, up right, up left. So in my own code in Project RPG, I implement this called sprite context. And the sprite context is what direction is this character facing texture-wise, because in Project RPG, there are 8 directions that you could be facing: up, down, left, right, and then the diagonals. However, we don't have assets for all 8 directions. We only have assets for 4. And so to extend this idea, I figured, well, what if this top animation could represent down and down right and right? But what if this could also represent down, down left, and left? Similarly, what if this could represent up, up right, and up? And then what if this could represent down, down right, or sorry, up, up left, and left, right? So there's a little bit of overlap, but effectively we can make it so that there is this intuition on like which direction you're facing based off of what direction key you most recently pressed, or whatever event preceding that entity's turn Like, for instance, there might be events that like cause the entity to spin and their direction change. Like maybe they get confused, and on every turn, some like confused trigger runs and does something like that, you know? Okay. So the problem, right, is for the next frame of the animation, we can't just drop it directly on top. We need to actually move it over one in order for it to maintain its good look here, right? Like, but the good news is that all we have to do is adjust the X position by 1 for that frame. So, like, there's frame 1, there's frame 2, frame 3, similarly, would also have to be positioned over 1 more. And then the last frame could also be positioned over 1 more. So that's the first row. We would do the opposite process damn, just had a bit of acid reflux there or some shit. So the opposite process, we would have to flip the sprite for the first frame. For the second frame, flip the sprite. And from the center, now we're moving left. Thankfully, the amount of transformation that we actually have to do for the new sprite is pretty straightforward. And we would just repeat this process as well for the bottom animations, right? Like they have a sprite for facing backwards, so we would just take that associated sprite, right, copy it over. Now we got it facing on his head backwards. Similarly, same thing down here. And the X transformation that we have to do to keep things, you know, proportional and positioned correctly is the same as it was for the first 2 rows. So we only have to put the X +1, +1, +1, and then flip the texture and then do -1, -1, -1. Now the real question is, how does this change for another animation? Let's take mining, because this will be an interesting, if we can even do it on this one, type case. Or what would the effect be, right? So actually, yeah, let's take the first frame of Black Hunter again. Sprite 1, we drop it, pretty straightforward. sprite 2, or position 2. Notice this time we have to move it back 1. So what I'm sensing out, like what I'm sussing out essentially, is an algorithm for procedurally generating sprite sheets for the missing animations. So like, given a input, like, basically I would have to like define out a folder structure that conforms to the animation arrangement that I'm setting up here. And for each asset in like our idle folder, that would be kind of like the default base case here. We first load that texture sheet and we snap out like the first and the third like column from the first, or rows from the first column. So this sprite and this sprite, or rather that sprite and that sprite. Because then, given an animation sheet that we're missing, and even then we wouldn't even have to actually, one thing that we could do, so like what I'm attempting to do is like, is there a way I can avoid having to manually specify like how many pixels each position has to move in order to generate the sheet? Is there a way that I can generate those numbers without having to manually specify them? Because then if a new animation comes out, one that I don't have yet, I can just run my program using that animation, and it would be able to figure out how many pixels each position of the corresponding new asset, like frames, would have to move in order for things to like remain and stay lined up. So what I'm thinking is, like in code, what I'll end up doing, so we can there's our 8x8. So imagine we like drew a bounding box. Oops. Oops, that's too big. All right, there's our 8x8. So you notice that it's 1, 2, 3 pixels on the left. So, oops. Why is it selecting the whole thing? Is this the new layer? Okay. Oh, Gracie's getting pissed off. I'm gonna have to move in a second. Give me a second, Grace. So this is 3 pixels on the right. But you notice that the guy's moving to the right, so like the hat would have to correspondingly move in that way as well. But we'd be able to derive that out of the first row. But what we're like effectively looking for is to like see if there's any change in where the positions of the pixels of this dude is at, right? So, and I totally anticipated someone asking for a ban. Glad I'm on the point with that. So let me refresh the chats. All right, Grace, I'm coming. Here, we're gonna move this guy over here. All right. The whole process I just described, I'm not going to be doing that right now. But one thing I do want to do is one, take a look and see what I might be doing wrong with regards to drawing out the hats, because they don't exactly look correct. They look pretty close, but it looks like my code is chopping off the top of the hat. And it's probably because some of the pixels of the hat are coming outside of that 8x8 area that I defined earlier. So I probably got a few opportunities for code cleanup as well. This is just going to be a chill, you know, just get some stuff done type stream. No music, just quiet coding. But feel free to chat, ask questions, participate in backseat critique of how shitty my code is. I don't give a fuck. Nice. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Careful there, baby. Almost knocked the water over. Got my dog next to me, got my cat in my chair. Life is good. All right. Yeah, talk to me about some of the stuff you're working on, Dulce. Come on, man. Like, you know, I got shit going on out here besides just game dev, but I'll be able to talk about some things more as they happen. They are in the middle of happening. This is happening now. So, before I continue, I just want to make sure that like y'all can see this shit. Good. Okay. That works for me. What happens if I make the... Okay, so I have to move the position of the dude. Tile editor, nice. That's definitely, like, actually one of the nice things about the way I'm doing things now is, and this is one reason I kind of want to restructure Project RPG using these ideas, is that previously I was separating out, like, first of all, way back in the beginning, I was hand rolling my own data structures, and then I said, fuck that shit. I'm converting to C++. I did. Now I'm doing STL for a lot of stuff. I'm still using, like, shared pointer all over the fucking place over there, and I still have to use it a little bit here, but as you can see, I've got some new shit cooking up. So we might actually want to move the position of the dynamic sprite composition text up a bit. I actually didn't see how that looked on y'all's screen. Okay, yeah, that's not too bad. Although, you know, being able to, like, I don't know. The previous size was okay too. Whenever we change any of these like .h values, or whenever we fuck with a .h file in general, I usually opt to recompile the whole program. On the off chance that any files relying upon the values in that file changed, I don't have rules set up to automatically detect. And generally speaking, editing those files doesn't trigger a recompilation whenever you make. So I just make clean. So we can actually make our dude a little bit smaller by zooming out a tiny bit at program launch. Look how many fucking assets. See, I gotta figure out some shit for this loading process though, because this is gonna be it's gonna be a monster method for like loading all of this shit, right? Not to mention loading, but also like, I mean, just management in general. Like the naming system is pretty straightforward, but there has to be a better way. You okay? Well, you're messing up my couch. I've got this blanket slash pee protector. She's and she loves to kick up covers and blankets and pillows and stuff when she's excited, irritated, mad, happy. I'm not exactly sure, but she likes to dig in the blankets. There has to be a better way to do this loading stuff though. It still looks like it's cutting off top of it. Not to mention, oh, this is why the real width and the real height that I'm calculating here. What if we don't actually need to store the offset? Okay, yeah, because that's messing up the source. Not to mention, this is also the incorrect value. Well, no, that's... This would be like where the 8x8 area actually starts. But, as we just realized, it should actually be like 0. because we're going to draw the whole 32 by 32 area out. Means we don't need these anymore. And we don't need these anymore. Now, as far as the drawing of the position goes, okay, there we go. There we go. So that we were clipping off the so as you can see, it definitely looks, correct now. It looks pretty good, honestly. So one thing I haven't calculated out yet is how many combinations are possible at the moment. Further, like, in really building out a good system here, I faced another problem. The problem is associating a in-game string with each one of these assets. Further, because of the problem of like, so the way that I implement this, right, is there's only one sprite, and that sprite is built up of a number of texture IDs. These texture IDs reference back into all of the textures that I loaded at the beginning of the game and allow me to index which texture goes where. So rather than storing pointers like I was doing in Project RPG, I just store integers. The problem is, one, loading each individual asset requires creating a new texture ID and some sort of variable like named in a way that can easily associate with it, because I'm not going to remember the numbers for all of these different textures. Fuck no. I gotta have some like easy English way for my stupid human brain to be able to quickly look up like what a texture ID is even for a particular asset, like purple cowboy hat or whatever. So one of the other problems that I face is, so let's say purple cowboy hat's like texture ID 306. Okay, so I can in code look up that asset and draw it very quickly. But how do I let the player know what asset that is? For each thing, there are other animations I gotta add in too, but like, this doesn't even encompass like cool looking armor or stuff like that, but maybe we can kind of like build something out of this that leads to that, right? So, because like if we can create an association between each texture ID and some string that relatively identifies what the item is, then we can display on the screen what's currently being worn. You see what I mean? Like, so how did I implement this? Shoutouts to Copilot for doing most of the hard work here. If there's one good use for Copilot, it's doing dumb shit like this. My god, this is fucking dumb as all hell. There has to be a better way. So for each one of the different assets, I first identified the relative folder structure. And at the bottom level, we've got the different color of the item. And there's like 15 colors here. There's black leather and black, blue, brown leather, green, gray, lime, magenta, orange, purple, red, turquoise, white leather, white, and yellow. And each one of these pieces of clothing has these colors. So for each piece of clothing, for one animation, how many different numbers are there? So we started at index 13 and we end at 269. So there's 256 fucking assets here. Whoa. I hope y'all heard that one. Ooh, that was the mama. Ooh, the mother crack. The crack that leads to so many other cracks. Oh, that felt good. $256 fucking assets. So, from a naked human putting on just a trapper hat, there's 15 different possible things, all right? So you take that 15 plus the one naked character. That's 16 possibilities out the gate. You can also put on a ranger hat, not on top of a trapper hat, but next to, or like instead of. You can also put on a pom-pom beanie, a long hat, a hood, a fedora hat, a cowboy hat, or a bandana. So we have a lot of options for head, right? So 148 to 269. It's 121 different possibilities for head alone, right? So we're going to start with that. Next, we've got trousers. We got 15 possibilities for trousers. Toga, I did not implement in my code yet because I'm thinking that a toga is going to be something that, like, you'll be able to wear, and, like, if you're wearing that, you can't wear pants underneath it, or you can't wear a shirt on top of it or underneath it, you know, that kind of thing. So we're going to omit togas from the calculation. Shoulder pads, we've got 15 options. Shoes, 15 options. Shirt, 15 options. Jacket, gloves, now shirt, right? We calculated shirt, but blouses and doublets can optionally replace shirt. If you're a chick, and I'm not going to limit this, like if you want to be a dude and you want to wear a blouse, that's your fucking choice. I'm not going to stop you. It's effectively a chest piece. So you got doublets, shirts, and blouses. Whatever your fancy is, I don't give a fuck. Like, I'll let you do whatever. I'm not going to stop you. If you're a dude, I'm not going to stop you from dressing like a chick. If you're a chick, I'm not going to stop you from dressing like a dude. Your choice. But the point being, we have to take those into account in the calculation. So 45 possible chest piece combinations, right? Sorry to hear that you were lacking in your meds. I've been on gabapentin once before, briefly. It didn't really help me in a way I'd like. Kind of had some, what I would describe as unpleasant side effects for me. Like a full body, like vibration type shit. Look at how many possibilities we got. $4 billion. Not even counting like situations where like you might not be wearing one of each, right? So actually, to properly account for that, we would have to add one to each of these in order to account for you not wearing that piece of item, right? Like, you might have a shirt on, you might not have a jacket on. You might have a pants but no shoes. You might wear a hat and be naked. So actually, guys, this system that I have here supports if my math is correct, almost 6 billion. So 5.8 billion combinations. So we had 121 hats. 122 if you count no hat. Then we had, counting no shoes, 16 shoes. So just with like hat and shoes alone, right? Like every additional dimension or every additional item piece that we are accounting for. And this doesn't include togas. So the situation with togas would be like, I wouldn't want you to be able to wear pants and a shirt. You might be able to wear a jacket on top of a toga, but not necessarily like the grass guys outside. And my cat got scared. He ran away. Is my math correct on this, y'all? Do we really have over 5 billion character possibilities here? Not even including like I'm not even counting the facial hair stuff that I have to implement yet, nor am I counting hairstyles. So like, if you have a hairstyle, you won't necessarily be able to show it off if you have a headpiece on, right? So there's certain things I would have to account for there. But you could certainly have a facial hair while, you know, having a hood on or while wearing a hat or something, right? So like, how would I implement that? Well, I can show you. Okay. First, let's make sure our code's all... Did I do anything? Yeah, we fixed... Oops. All right, we've renamed all of the files. We've created a folder structure. So first we have to create an association between these files, like their texture, and an identifier in the code. Now's the magic of Copilot. Now, here's the other thing with the colors before we can actually do Copilot. All right. We've got some new identifiers, this time for facial hair. So in Sprite layer ID, we have an integer sequence called an enum that we're using to define each unique specifier here. We probably could have done the same thing for the texture ID, then we wouldn't have to manually specify things. And I might actually convert it back over to that in the near future. Here we have a layer for facial hair already because I was anticipating this. Just hadn't gotten to it yet. We also have a layer for hair because I'm going to do hair later. Pretty impressed with how little CPU my machine is using while streaming. Shoutouts to the hardware encoding being done by my 3080 NVIDIA card. I did forget to change the directory I'm saving the video to, so I'm going to have to remember to move that over post-stream. I try to record as much as I can because I do plan on, like, every so often I got something hot to say, and it's worth holding on to those clips. Oh, so now that we have identifiers and we confirmed we have the sprite layer ID defined for it already, it's funny it tried to load black leather hair just now. I have to remind it what the facial hair colors are, because it obviously keeps thinking it wants to make like black leather, hair. Whoa. So I got goatee and chin curtain. It missed chin strap. But we should be able to just yank those, paste, select, change the word curtain to strap, and then change the all caps curtain to all caps strap. We got chin curtain, chin strap, goatee. We gotta do long beard, mustache. So we can actually do the same thing for this one. Yank. paste, select, goatee becomes long beard. Select goatee becomes long beard. Select, oops, goatee becomes mustache. Goatee becomes all caps mustache. So that loads the textures in. Now we can actually access them and do things such as draw them to the screen. Before I do that, I'm going to make sure that the code still compiles. Uh-oh. Chin curtain black. Let's see. Image slash head human idle facial hair. Oh, it's facial underscore hair. Fuck. Okay, so we're gonna move facial hair to facial hair because otherwise none of that shit's gonna load. I didn't really need to do that, but whatever. There we go. Okay. So if we want the facial hair to be accounted for in this random selection thing I've got going on here, I created a little inline function here to set random clothing depending upon what layer you specify. So here's where we handle the actual setting depending upon which layer it is. So if we wanted to handle facial hair, we're gonna have to create a new case. It's still fun. It's funny. It keeps thinking black leather is an option. So facial hair, like so we'll start with chin curtain. Chin curtain black. And then we end on mustache white. So because of the system I set up, all we have to do is specify the layer, and that acts as the key into the sprite's own layer dictionary. So using this, we'd be able to set an arbitrary texture identifier for that layer on every run through. And because of the ordering, it shouldn't matter where in the list of enums that facial hair actually falls in order for the drawing routine to properly update that layer. So if we add a call to layer facial hair in set random close, no, facial hair is not closed. Because that was a .h file, we had to rebuild the whole thing. Look, he's got a blue beard. He's got a long beard. He's got a mustache. He's got Abe Lincoln. Dude's looking Amish. This is pretty good. Huh, that's an obvious pirate. There's a farmer with a blonde beard. So how many more possibilities did we just introduce? We started at 270 and we end on 319. There's another 49 in dimension. So is that 288 billion? Holy fuck. We're not even done yet. $288 billion? Really? 288 billion character combinations? Is my math correct? Am I not bullshitting? I think so. I think that's actually what it is. Because even if we like limited our options to just like shirt and pants, no pants is one option. You add that to the list of pants options. That's 16 options, right? So I pick brown pants. And then for each shirt option, including no shirt, we have another 16 options. And just between pants and shirt alone, that's 256. So off of what I'm generating here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So like generate a chest. Remember, you can get blouses, doublets, or shirts. So each one of these is 15 or 16. Although I'm not counting none in the random choice here. Although I should account for that in the code, right? Like, so like, how would we account for this in code, right? Let's say we were just selecting like just a random hat. I don't want this thing to be centered. So we got like a lot of different hats, right? Like 46 different hats, 49 different facial hairs. So let's take a look at how we're drawing things at the moment. This actually is pulling the texture ID without checking what its value is. So if we set a layer and then later decide we'd like to remove that layer, how should we go about doing that, right? Okay. So we can optionally remove one layer or wipe all the layers, right? So on every loop through, like every 3 seconds, we're calling set random all close. So we're going to try and stub this out so that we're not like hard coding, randomly setting every slot so much as randomly selecting slots and then adding close. And if all the slots are selected in a round, then it'll apply everything to each layer. Otherwise, we're going to randomly select whether or not we even apply something to a layer. So what that will require is for us to remove all sprite layers before we do set random all close. So let's see. Okay, so first we're going to create a temporary vector, and then we're going to create a second vector It's going to be empty to start with. We're going to create a random count. Set it equal to get random value from 0 to layer IDs dot size -1. So for instance, I equals 0, I less than random count, I plus plus. We're going to select a random index from layer IDs. We're going to add that to our secondary vector. And we're going to remove the sprite layer ID at the index from layer IDs. It was blowing up my phone. All right. This seems like it should work. So at the end of this loop, the layers vector will have a randomly selected list containing 0 to or more layer IDs. Once we have these layer IDs available to us, we can just for auto ID in layers auto layer ID equals ID dot second. Wait. Oh, yeah. It's not something. It's not an iterable. We need to say auto ID in layers. If we wanted to be more clear, we could say layer ID. And then we can say layer ID there. And this should this should actually fully implement the total range of possible combinations that we can have, because this also includes not equipping certain items, right? So yeah, there we go. So for instance, if I wanted to like start the process of actually displaying on the screen what's actually being worn, at minimum what I could do is for each layer return what texture ID is currently set for it. So I could create like a real temporary map This is not like the most performant way to do what I'm doing right now. So bear with me. This is just for demo purposes. What's the problem with this code here? Yeah, it doesn't like that either. Oh. Okay, I see what happened. Wait, what? Oh, there we go. I was curious. It's not correctly updating close for the layer ID. I would have expected it to change. This needs to go down here. But we can't do that. Unless we have access to the player ID. So one of the things I'm going to have to build out, I'll probably end up doing this off stream, is I have to kind of move some of these functions from Sprite into Sprite group so that when changes are made, they happen to all of the different relevant sprites in the map. Because at the moment, we're hard coding in just one sprite position because we're only working with the idle animation. But when we get all of the other animations in, being able to call it on just the sprite group will save me the trouble of having to like grab each individual fucking sprite and do this shit manually, you know what I'm saying? Well, NeoVim is obviously my preference. Sounds like you're trying to start some shit. We always get one retarded motherfucker who comes into chat and asks me dumbass questions like, which is better, NeoVim or Visual Studio Code? It depends. It depends on how you like to do things. It depends on how much experience you have with Vim already. That said, you can integrate Vim key bindings and kind of start tricking out Visual Studio Code to be more Vim-like. And you can certainly learn a bunch of new keyboard combinations for it so that you don't have to use the fucking mouse so goddamn often. But right out of the box, one of my biggest problems with Visual Studio Code is that when I Control plus to zoom in on my editor so that my editor text is bigger, it makes everything bigger. Including, it basically, like, zooming in effectively removes visual workspace by making all of the other UI elements bigger, because it's a fucking Electron app and they did not design this shit out of the box so that if you wanted to like make your editor text bigger, no, instead you have to go into a fucking JSON file and edit it that way. which completely breaks my immersion, because my intuition for most things, especially working in the terminal for as long as I have, is that I can do Control plus right now, Control plus, and I can make my text bigger. I can make the whole fucking terminal bigger. It conforms to what my expectation is. It doesn't remove my visual workspace. It just makes everything bigger, and that's what I want. So right out of the box, Alacrity in combination with NeoVim, I would say, is superior. Now, if you like don't know shit about either, then it's a really valid question. Most of the people watching this stream have some interest or knowledge in programming already, so I can't fault a newbie if they don't know the difference and legitimately have to ask. But it's also kind of a dumb question, because at the end of the day, no matter what anyone's advice is, you're still going to have to sit down to one or the other, or some other option. You're still going to have to learn it. You're still going to have to use it long enough to figure out if you hate it or not. You're still going to have to go through the motions for one or the other to kind of get good, son. That's just a fact. Nothing wrong with that. But if you're like asking me my preference, and you can clearly see that I'm using NeoVim, and then you have the audacity to ask which is better, like, the only other option would be I'm using NeoVim because I don't like it, which doesn't really make sense. You know, if I'm like hate using software, that's just like, it doesn't sound very pleasant or desirable. Like, editor wars are a real thing, you know. It used to be Vim versus Emacs. Now it's NeoVim versus Visual Studio Code. Honestly, if you have to ask that kind of question, I'm going to recommend that you use Nano. Fucking grass cutter right next to my goddamn door. Jesus Christ. Could you be any louder? Go the fuck away. I'm streaming. God damn. Man, I just don't give a fuck. There's not even any grass on this side. There's legit not any grass over here. I don't know why they have to get so close to my door. Still not properly setting. Still returning a 0. Why is that? we're correctly printing it up here. Oh, I think, well, no, it appears to be getting stored properly. Oh, maybe it's because it's const char. And like once it formats, it like can't update itself, or no, because every frame it's gonna like reallocate. So see, now it's not coming back correctly. what's really weird is it's not retaining after we go through and if we finish drawing, which is the really weird part. I have to leave in a little bit, start getting ready for a meeting. I've got an interview. What the fuck is going on here? Does it get like reset like every time through because it's not like statically allocated, or it's not like persistent? But like even after we assign it the first time, like it should stick after we get down here. Like close of layer hat should be there. What am I doing wrong? And yeah, Dulce, technically you're right. Like I don't have to go this hard, but I want to. Because this just increases the the level of depth at a certain point. Like I plan on having like very in-depth procedural generation for not only like the worlds themselves but the things in them. At any rate, this is a work in progress. I'll figure this out, but I'm gonna take a break to get something to eat as well, recharge, get my energy back up, get ready for this meeting in a couple hours, and wish me luck. Thanks for joining, everyone. I appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Until next time, take it easy.